Laudato Si is the second encyclical of Pope Francis. The encyclical has the subtitle, On Care for Our Common Home. In it, the Pope critiques consumerism and irresponsible development, laments environmental degradation and global warming, and calls all people of the world to take swift and unified global action. The encyclical, dated the 24th of May 2015, was officially published at noon on the 18th of June 2015, accompanied by a news conference. The Vatican released the document in Italian, German, English, Spanish, French, Polish, Portuguese and Arabic. The encyclical is the second published by Francis, after Lumen Fide, which was released in 2013. Since Lumen Fide was largely the work of Francis's predecessor Benedict XVI, Laudato Si is generally viewed as the first encyclical that is entirely Francis's work. Content. The title of the social encyclical is an Umbrian phrase from St. Francis of Assisi's 13th century Canticle of the Sun, a poem and prayer in which God is praised for the creation of the different creatures and aspects of the earth. The tone of his phrasing has been described as cautious and undogmatic, and he specifically calls for discussion and dialogue. For example, he states there are certain environmental issues where it is not easy to achieve a broad consensus. Here I would state once more that the Church does not presume to settle scientific questions or to replace politics, but I am concerned to encourage an honest and open debates of the particular interests or ideologies will not prejudice the common good. He adds that, although the post-industrial period may well be remembered as one of the most irresponsible in history, nonetheless there is reason to hope that humanity at the dawn of the 21st century will be remembered for having generously shouldered its grave responsibilities. Francis does state that concern for the natural world is no longer optional, but is an integral part of the Church teaching on social justice. Francis reportedly has said that the encyclical was not really an environmental document at all. The warming of the planet is a symptom of a greater problem: the developed world's indifference to the destruction of the planet as they pursue short-term economic gains. This has resulted in a throwaway culture, in which unwanted items and unwanted people, such as the unborn, the elderly, and the poor, are discarded as waste. This subtext makes the document more profoundly subversive than it appears on the surface. The real problem, according to Francis, lies in the fact that humans no longer see God as the creator. Thus, we see other living beings as mere objects subjected to arbitrary human domination, and do not realize that the ultimate purpose of other creatures is not found in us. Francis says that instead of viewing humanity as having dominion over the earth, we must see that everything is interconnected and that all of creation is a kind of universal family. Nature cannot be seen as something apart from humanity, or merely the place where we live. He says that our social and environmental crises are thus one complex crisis that must be solved holistically. Environmentalism. Francis pulls no punches when lamenting pollution, climate change, a lack of clean water, loss of biodiversity, and an overall decline in human life and a breakdown of society. Never have we so hurt and mistreated our common home as we have in the last 200 years, he states. He describes a relentless exploitation and destruction of the environment, for which he blamed apathy, the reckless pursuit of profits, excessive faith in technology, and political short-sightedness. Laudato Si unambiguously accepts the scientific consensus that changes in the climate are largely man-made, and states that climate change is a global problem with grave implications, environmental, social, economic, political, and for the distribution of goods. It represents one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day, and warns of unprecedented destruction of ecosystems, with serious consequence for all of us if prompt climate change mitigation efforts are not undertaken. The encyclical highlights the role of fossil fuels in causing climate change. We know that technology based on the use of highly polluting fossil fuels, especially coal, but also oil and, to a lesser degree, gas, needs to be progressively replaced without delay, Francis says, until greater progress is made in developing widely accessible sources of renewable energy. It is legitimate to choose the less harmful alternative or to find short-term solutions. The encyclical's comments on climate change are consistent with the scientific consensus on climate change. Poverty. The encyclical states that developed nations are morally obligated to assist developing nations in combating the climate change crisis. Poor nations, the pontiff says, are ill-prepared to adapt to the effects of climate change and will bear the brunt of its effects. Linking the issues of poverty, which has been a major issue in his papacy, and the environment, he insists that the world must hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. He does not believe, according to R. Reno, that, for all our flaws, Western societies are more democratic, more egalitarian, and more inclusive than any in history. Citing the New Zealand Bishops' Conference statement on environmental issues, Francis asks what the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," means when 20% of the world's population consumes resources at a rate that robs the poor nations and future generations of what they need to survive. Science and modernism. Science and religion, with the distinctive approaches to understanding reality, can enter into an intense dialogue fruitful for both. According to the pontiff, religions, including Christianity, can make rich contributions towards an integral ecology and the full development of humanity. However, the scientific and experimental method itself can be part of the problem when it decouples creation from the creator. R. Reno, editor of First Things, critiques the encyclical, writing Laudato Si, makes many fierce denunciations of the current global order. This global order destroys the environment, oppresses the multitudes, and makes us blind to the beauty of creation. The critiques of the scientific and technocratic present contained in the encyclical make this perhaps the most anti-modern encyclical since the Syllabus of Errors. Pius IX's haughty 1864 dismissal of the conceits of the modern era. He adds that the encyclical's tone lacks elements commonly found in the works of John Paul II and Benedict XVI that, in the tradition of Gaudium et Spes, would have affirmed the modern world while correcting its errors. Technology. Modern technology, the dominant technological paradigm, is seen as a key contributor to the environmental crisis and human suffering. The technological paradigm has become so dominant that it would be difficult to do without its resources and even more difficult to utilize them without being dominated by their internal logic. It has become countercultural to choose a lifestyle whose goals are even partly independent of technology. Technology tends to absorb everything into its ironclad logic, and those who are surrounded with technology know full well that it moves forward in the final analysis neither for profit nor for the well-being of the human race. Technology is not value-neutral and technological developments are directed by the profit motive, according to Pope Francis. This is a form of institutionalized greed, generally with little regard for environmental and social consequences. The economy accepts every advance in technology with a view to profit, without concern for its potentially negative impact on human beings. The encyclical warns against blind confidence in technical solutions, particularly in view of the fact that the specialization which belongs to technology makes it difficult to see the large picture, which can actually become a form of ignorance. As a result, many technological solutions are nothing more than short-term techno-fixes attempting to remove symptoms rather than addressing the underlying environmental, social, economic, and even moral and spiritual problems. Technology, which linked to business interests, is presented as the only way of solving these problems. In fact, proves incapable of seeing the mysterious network of relations between things, and so sometimes solves one problem only to create others. Given these significant shortcomings of technology, scientific and technological progress cannot be equated with progress of humanity in history, and we are deluded by the myth of progress to believe that ecological problems will solve themselves simply with the application of new technology and without need for ethical consideration. A deep change, a profound redefinition of progress and liberation from the dominant technocratic paradigm is needed, i.e., we have the freedom needed to limit and direct technology. We can put it at the service of another type of progress, one which is healthier, more human, more social, more integral, more fundamentally, according to the pontiff. We need to recognize that technology severed from ethics will not easily be able to limit its own power, and that the most extraordinary scientific advances, the most amazing technical abilities, the most astonishing economic growth, unless they are accompanied by authentic social and moral progress, will definitively turn against man. Pope Francis adds that the environmental crisis can ultimately only be solved if our immense technological developments are accompanied by a development in human responsibility, values, and conscience. Other topics. According to a New York Times summary, the encyclical is sweeping in scope and is wide-ranging, including mentions of such topics as urban planning, agricultural economics, and biodiversity. The encyclical also gives voice to the Pope's opposition to abortion, embryonic stem cell research, and population control, saying that respect for creation and human dignity go hand in hand. Since everything is interrelated, Francis says, concern for the protection of nature is also incompatible with the justification of abortion. According to the Pope, we can't in fact genuinely teach the importance of concern for other vulnerable beings, however troublesome or inconvenient they may be, if we fail to protect a human embryo, even when its presence is uncomfortable and creates difficulties. Laudato Si opposes gender theory and supports valuing one's own body in its femininity and masculinity. In acknowledging differences, the Pope states, we can joyfully accept the specific gifts of another man or woman, the work of God the Creator, and find mutual enrichment. Sources: the encyclical has 172 footnoted citations, many to Francis's immediate predecessors, John Paul II and Benedict XVI. The encyclical also draws prominently from Bartholomew I of Constantinople, the Patriarch of the Eastern Orthodox Church of Constantinople and an ally of the Pope. It is highly unusual to quote an Orthodox bishop in a papal document. More than 10% of them, 21, cite documents from 16 bishops' conferences around the world, mostly from the Global South. This is the first encyclical to cite bishops' conferences. This was an effort, experts believe, to build alliances on a controversial topic. The encyclical also cites St. Thomas Aquinas, Ali al-Khawas, a 9th-century Sufi mystic, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and Romano Guardini. History. Early stages. Speculation about an environmental encyclical to be issued by Pope Francis first began in November 2013. On the 24th of January 2014, the Vatican confirmed that drafting had begun. The Rev. Federico Lombardi, the Holy See Press Office Director, said that the document was in its very early stages, that no publication date had been set, and that the encyclical would be about ecology. Cardinal Peter Turkson, the president of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, and his team read the first draft of the encyclical. The draft was later reviewed by several theologians as well and sent to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the second section of the Secretariat of State, and the theologian of the papal household. Edits were made based on the responses. In drafting the encyclical, the Vatican consulted with leading scientific experts for months. One of the experts consulted was Hans Joachim Schellnhuber, the founder and head of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and chair of the German Advisory Council on Global Change. On the 28th of April 2015, in advance of the encyclical's release, the Vatican hosted a one-day conference on climate change, featuring Turkson, United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa, and American economist Jeffrey Sachs. The title and subtitle of the encyclical were first reported on in a Twitter message by Spanish-language journalist Mercedes de la Torre on 30 May, 2015. The Vatican confirmed that the title would be Laudato Si on 10 June, while some initial reports said the encyclical would be called Laudato Sii. This was incorrect. The Pope chose to use the original Umbrian form and spelling of the poem, with a single I. On 4 June, the Vatican press office announced that the encyclical, which was already attracting global attention for its expected discourses on Catholic theology on ecology, current environmental destruction, and climate change, would be released on 18 June. Leak 4 days before the encyclical's release, the Italian magazine L'Espresso posted a leaked draft of the document online. The leaked document almost exactly matched the final document. The leak angered Vatican officials, who called it a heinous act and revoked the press credentials of the long-time L'Espresso Vatican correspondent, Sandro Magista. The New York Times and the Italian newspaper La Stampa both noted suggestions that the leak came from conservatives inside the Vatican who wished to embarrass the Pope and hinder the rollout of the encyclical. The encyclical letter was officially released at an event in the new Synod Hall of the Vatican City. Speaking at the press conference were Turkson, Schellnhuber, and John Ziziolas. On the day of the encyclical's official release, Pope Francis issued 2 messages about it on his official Twitter account, @Pontifex. It has been suggested that the encyclical's release was timed to influence 3 summits being held at the United Nations on financial aid, sustainable development and climate change later in 2015.